Hey guys, so this is the last page of Hawkmother, and the other pages I discovered as I was coloring them that I just got way too complicated and went way too far with too many layers. The whole intention of this is to keep it as sort of time and line conservative as possible. This is like an extension of my sketchbooks as comics. So keeping it simple sounds like a really easy approach, but it's actually pretty hard. It's hard to hold back. So I thought pretty hard about how I used to color some sketchbook stuff using a single layer, and I'm going to attempt to force myself to do that here. These layers over here are my fake lettering, as you saw in the other stuff. I mean, it's kind of expressionistic rather than being actual lettering. I'll do a video about the lettering at some other point in the future. I'm not a real letterer. It's just a way of getting words on the page. I did, before this, make a layer of Zipatone, or it used to be called Zipatone, when you had them on these kind of plastic sheets and you would lay down the plastic adhesive onto the art and then scratch off what you didn't want. I did do that here already. And my choices here were largely about, set that up a little, largely about just kind of create some depth. So I created some highlights on here. I cut it away here where this like blast is going or this knife wound is going. Same thing over here with just some highlights and cut away foreground and background. This area here was just left on accident, and I kind of liked it because it brings the eye over here to the left side of the page. So the art layer is usually going to be in darken. That means basically there are all these different sort of effects that you can do to the layers. I've never even tried to explain it before, so I'm not sure how to explain it here, other than you can it changes the way you see through that layer of art for stuff that's underneath it, such as the colors. So this is my pencil layer, which I just penciled in on an iPad Pro, just quickly sketching it. I'm sorry I can't capture every single step of these things. I'm going to try one day to just literally capture every single step of a comic or a short story. But it's hard to do because a lot of times the mood hits you during, you're just sitting there on a couch and you're ready to sketch away or something, or I'm traveling out into the woods and I'm sketching, and it's just hard to have camera-ready stuff all the time, But maybe I'll get there as the equipment gets easier. So this is how I usually color, and I'm going to attempt to do this, like I said, in my old comic metal sketchbook way. And what I would do is I would just grab a single color, usually a very neutral color, like this blue right here is in the middle of the spectrum, and then I would just plop it on here, one single tone. And then with that single tone, I can then grab this lasso tool and just very quickly grabbing the outlines here. The opening page for the actual Hawkmother character. The way I consider Hawkmother, this elderly character is the Hawkmother, and she's a sort of neo-paganistic Valkyrie witch. I don't know how else to explain it. Her timeline is someplace in the future. These characters, like this woman with the helmet, are sort of her avatars, and there's a bunch of different of these characters that are kind of like the Valkyries who go out on her missions. I don't want to say too much about the story because in the future I want you guys to actually take a stab at scripting something here out of this story, or just hear your interpretations of it. So anyway, Hawkmother here. The opening of the stories were kind of the sepia thing. and sepia tone. So I can go up here into these layers, into the images, adjustments. I go to huge saturation. It's one of my favorite things to play around with. There's much better, much smarter ways of going about this, and I suggest if you're really interested in coloring, to follow Nick Filardi on Twitter and Twitch. He does these great videos. Anyway, so I can grab the hue here, the saturation. First thing I'm going to do is bump the saturation way down. I'm going to then play around with the hue until I find something, this sort of brownish sepia-like color. Too light. Alright, that's pretty close to what I had in the opening. So this is largely how I'm going to end up coloring this. And I don't mind these shapes sticking out on the sides here. You see how I just sort of did a very light, loose way of selecting the exterior. So now I'm going to do some shading on her. Let me zoom in some. Oops. I'm going to move the camera around a little bit with my hand here, so I'm not using too many key shortcuts or anything. Let's deselect that. Alright, now I'm going to do some shading here. It's kind of coming from the side. And I'm just sort of almost thinking about, like, well, how would I be coloring this with like a marker or something? Like, what are just the wide general shapes that I can grab? And I'm going to give her a shadow here on the seat, but I'm going to do that separately, and you'll see why. Now, what's kind of important here is this little detail of her taking off her headphones, because it kind of mimics the character taking off her helmet up here. If you remember from the very first chapter, she put on those headphones. So the headphones are sort of symbolic of some kind of, I don't know, spell or transportation or something. It's hard for me to say because, again, I created the story very instinctively, I guess. It's sort of like a meditation. I meditate twice a day. My wife and I helps keep us sane, help me deal with pressure and stress and stuff like that. But I also find it's great. It's a great way to just sort of explore inner thoughts without being in my own way, if that makes any sense. Anyway, so I'm going back in here into the hue saturation, and now I'm going to just darken this up. What I've realized is if I darken it anything less than 20%, it doesn't show very much, so it's not even worth it. It's not enough contrast for me. I like a lot of contrast. So usually I go around 20 or 30%. 30% looks like it's going to be good here. Actually, I'm at 34, 35, whatever. I'm not, you know me, I'm not specific about things. So then right behind her, I want her to have a shadow here, just to give some depth to it. But I'm going to just go back here to the hue saturation again, and I'm probably just going to desaturate it and darken it a little. So as you can see, I'm doing all this with one color, and I'm just kind of bumping it into slightly different directions. Let's do some highlights on her. There's a couple things I know I'm going to do after I shut the camera off, just because I only have so much time to tackle this. I'll probably end up doing some really pure white highlights on her to really accentuate like parts of her nose and her eye and this thing, the headphones. I also think I want to do a sort of ghost. I'm going to try a ghost image of her lifting it off of her head as well. but I'm not sure if that will work. I'll try and capture that on camera too. So just some basic highlights here. Sure, lighten up her eyes a little bit too. And then again, back in image, adjustments, into the hue saturation, and then I'm just going to lighten it like that, 50%. All right, and that's kind of it. Like I want to keep it simple, so I could keep fiddling around here and doing more and less and stuff, but this is my intention, is to keep this stuff basic, keep it simple. So I'm going to select this background area here. See all the smoke in here. And the smoke I'm going to make adjustments, hue saturation. Just lightened up a lot, desaturated a little bit. So I lightened it, looks like 63%, and then I desaturated a little bit, about 30%. Actually, I should have kind of done that with everything. Everything that I wanted to lighten up, it's just like all these backgrounds here. And I got to make sure that doesn't get into like the figure work. I'll show you how I can take that out later or after. All right. So I'm grabbing this lasso tool. With the lasso tool up here, there's different options to grab a selection in different ways. This is making me unselect something, so I'm unselecting the area here in the hands that got caught. Over here at the feet, I don't want that selected. It's going to be tricky. Let's see what happens. This brown, whoops. That was just a clip from the camera. It came undone, so I'm just going to have to hold this. All right. Oops. Alright, so all this background stuff is selected now. So image, go into the hue saturation again, and then I'm just going to lighten all that area all at once. See that? Take care of everything at once. Oh, I kind of like that color. For some reason, it's kind of reddish. Okay. Deselect. Oops. Again, I'm thinking and moving and doing this with one hand while holding a camera and stuff, so sorry if it's not always super clear what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. Right, so I got to fix this area in here. And just quickly I'll select. I can usually use a shortcut down here, but I'm holding this by my hand, so it's a little tricky. So I just selected that area and then filled it in with the same color. Quickly grab this sort of action line here where she's cutting through him. This I want to be pretty stark, so I'm just going to delete that whole area so it's just pure white. That's weird. This kind of looked like it was a color before, but now I realize it was just white. But I like that it was this, I thought that it was this kind of pinkish color. So I'm going to fill that in here. Oops, that went everything. Yeah, that's good enough. Alright, so to help see the difference better here between the background and foreground, between the kind of Valkyrie character and this robot character, I have to make sure they're different tones. Let's outline this area. Then image adjustment. I'm just going to lower his saturation and then bump him over into like a slightly more greenish color. See, with the hue here, I can just change all this all the hue. I want to keep him light because I'm going to make her a little darker. Sometimes in the foreground, you want good foreground background separation by creating different values, which is, the lightness and darkness of an object. Definitely going to have to do some cleaning up in here because right now it's too loose and sloppy. But again, I'm kind of doing one hand and recording and stuff. I just want to give you guys the idea of, this kind of weird coloring technique. This is not how I color most comics or how they should be colored at all. This is just me. For this particular thing. So just to save some time, besides, since I know I'm going to darken this up, I'm also going to darken up other areas here on the page. And that way when I change the hue and saturation, I'm not just working one panel, I'm actually kind of technically working on several different panels at once. That. Notice a lot of times, I guess the way I'm holding this flat pen, it ends up looking like the light source is coming from below, like a lot of the heavier lines end up on top. So I'm going to have to pay more attention to that because I don't want everything to look like it's got the same lighting effect or lighting source, Grab this. Let me see if there's anything else I want to darken up. I guess I'll do the same thing here. I'm going to make foreground a little darker. Alright, so make sure on camera you can see all this. This is so I can do all of this at once. I could do a little bit more shading in here with these guys and stuff, but I'm not going to. At least right now. I just want to get the basics of this done. Usually what I'll do is when I make this first pass, I'll leave it and then I'll come back to it a little bit later and do some more detailed stuff. So right now this is just that kind of first basic pass. I'm going to darken everything by 20%. Yeah, let's go to 25. I think that's good enough. That's closer to what I've been attempting to do on these pages, but I've been adding a lot more detail. Then we can have some quick fun. Oh, I should fix all these little things before I get into it, actually. Yeah, I'm going to have a lot of little fixing to do, but it won't take long. Little fixing, I'm talking about this stuff, like the foot here became a different color, which I don't particularly want to happen. Like, I don't mind these outlines and chunks, but there's certain things in here that I do want to keep consistent. I'm going to do this one-handed, so it's a little weird. Grab the foot color. Just color that in real quick. That space in between here, I got to use this pincher. Grab that color, go back to the pen. And I'll just quickly fill that in. Here with the foot. That's good enough. I'm going to go back in and we're going to do a little bit of highlight here. Not too much because, again, quick. I'm almost spending too much time on this already. Lighten that up, 50%. Grab her face in here. I think the rest of hers are costumes, so with her face. I mean, I could grab specific colors, you know, and drop it in. For some reason, this is just something I do. I don't know why I became comfortable doing this. I think it's because of the, I don't know, the spontaneity of it, you know. Kind of like when you work with watercolors, watercolors often choose their path for you. Like, and I like that. There's a sense of spontaneity that's hard to get in Photoshop because there's so many options when you're working in Photoshop. There's so many options of what you can do. This sort of limits my options, and it keeps me moving quick. Some highlights here. Hue and saturation. Oops. So that's basically it. Now I'm going to go into this a little bit more, you know, to finish it out. But I just want to give you like a really basic idea of how this last page is going to go. So I got clean up some stuff, like I said. I'm working one-handed because I'm holding the camera, so I'm not using my shortcut keys or anything. So it's slowing me down a lot. But this is basically it. This really is. Now I'm going to do stuff like put those highlights on her costume. Maybe adjust the colors a little bit with those little bumps you see if we move into the hue and saturation around a little bit. And this is kind of it. Oh yeah, here's the zipper tone layer too. So yeah, I mean that's the quick sketchbook approach that I've been wanting to do, even though I've been doing a lot of overcoloring. But that's okay. These things are experimental, and that's the whole point. Just kind of play around with this and do something that's like a sketchbook, but as a pseudo story. I say pseudo story because this one in particular is very weird. Other ones I'm working on are much more linear. Some nostalgia stuff, like about my childhood. Some other fantasy stuff that's very straightforward. But this kind of really weird out there one, I just wanted to. It was just in me, and I needed to get out, And that's it. So I hope you like this video, and I'll be posting the final chapter of Hawkmother later, and they'll have the high-res photos and all that stuff. High-res scans, I mean, and that's it. Thank you.